This is Larry Jordan, the host of the Digital Production Buzz. The following interview is an excerpt from a recent program. To hear the entire program, visit digitalproductionbuzz.com. 2014, Kanen Flowers founded That Studio with a focus on independent visual effects, creative content, and distribution of new films. Along with his co-founder, Alan E. Bell, Kanen is helping new and existing artists get their content onto the Internet. Hello, Kanen. Welcome back.
Oh, hello, Larry. Good to be back.
It's good to have you back. It's been a long time since last we chatted. Let's start at the beginning. Why did you decide to start That Studio?
Well, so, originally we started That Studio with the idea of helping independent filmmakers create original content. I mean, I've always been an independent filmmaker, as you know. I started out as a technology guy and always had an eye toward film and toward creating independent film. Television, I was always the guy that preferred, Sideways over Transformers. So I always thought, it'd be really interesting to help people like that, And so I got into film thinking, this whole film thing is going from cameras, from film cameras, right, to digital cameras. And as a technology guy, that made a lot of sense to me. And then as I got into it more and more, I started realizing that there's a lot of content. There's a lot of ways to create content out there, but there aren't a lot of tools that are really geared toward what I would call the independent filmmaker. I mean, there are a lot of plugins and there's a lot of stuff that you can use, but I didn't feel like anybody was really trying to figure out, hey, let's say I want to make the next, upstream color, like with Shane Carruth or Primer. How do I do that? Where do I start? How do I begin? How do I even approach? I mean, it's an enormous undertaking to figure out how to approach making an independent film or a television show or to kind of liberate yourself like that. And so I got excited about that. And I spent 2 years. Go ahead.
It sounds like what you were doing is not looking at the individual technology, not looking at the plugins, but looking at the process, that you were looking at a process solution rather than a technological solution.
Yeah, we did. We spent 2 years really screwing up publicly. We created this company called Scruffy TV, and then we just spent 2 years. And I know Michael Horton has seen a lot of the mess, but we spent 2 years just failing publicly to see, how do we even build this stuff?
Yeah, but a lot of that mess we also learned from.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I know I learned a lot. And you're exactly right, Larry. It started out as, how do I do this process? How do I build this group of people, who know what they're doing? How do I enable them with the tools? And for us even, how do I have a group of people around the world all collaborate? And those are all really hard questions to answer. And along the way, we discovered a couple things, and I can talk about it as little or as much as you'd like.
Well, help me understand what it is that you discovered, because when you talk about collaboration with a team of people around the world, that's a management issue. How do you manage remote creative people? And has nothing to do with filmmaking. It has everything to do with management and motivation and inspiration. There's a big difference between that and telling a story with pictures.
No, I completely agree. And one of the biggest challenges we had in the beginning with That Studio is, accountability. Accountability is really tough, right? When you have people in Poland or you have people in Australia and you're in San Francisco or Hollywood or wherever you are. Portland for 9 months while we shot a TV show. Accountability is tough, but it turns out that, a combination of creating a strong meritocracy where people are rewarded for actually working and then using the right tools. Like we use Trello and Whipster, and there's just a ton of tools that we use that really enable that. It's tough. And I think a lot of people try and skip over that, right? There's a massive human component to some of this work that we do.
I'm discovering it here as our business gets bigger and as we start to add more and more staff, figuring out who's responsible for what and figuring out what are realistic deadlines and clear lines of communication is a never-ending process of self-discovery.
I absolutely agree. I mean, and tools are only as good as the people who are using them too, right? And so the hardest part is obviously getting everyone on board. I'm lucky enough that I have a group of people who all share my vision, this idea that we can all collaborate together to build tools for people like us, but for also other independent filmmakers. So one of the great things that came out of this whole process is along the way, we shot Hero Punk, which is the first feature film shot on a Blackmagic Cinema camera, which was kind of fun. All green screen, which you can see behind me, there's green screen.
It's an amazing green screen,
do
by the way.
something
I've
with that
never
green
seen
screen,
a higher quality green screen in my life.
We'll send him the technology.
I think it's $29 on Amazon. But I'm cheap. I don't think I've probably mentioned that every time we talk. So building all of these different properties, right, like Hero Punk and 1820, and we've shown some of the stuff that we've done. We've shown behind the scenes and we've shown how to. But what we discovered along the way was really fascinating. We discovered that not only were we having to build this process, but also we realized that there were actually a ton of tools that we didn't have and that, in fact, no one had. And it was really frustrating. And I'll give you a great, really quick example. Let's say that you have, which you would if you shot on the Blackmagic Cinema camera and you shot especially Cinema DNG. Let's say you have 120 gigabytes of footage that you start editing, the editor works on, and then you get into picture lock. Well, after you get that 120 gig of footage into picture lock, what do you do now? You conform. Conform is such a boring thing to do, and nobody wants to do it. It turns out there was actually no tool that automated that process. There was no tool that took that 120 gigabytes of footage, put it into a common codec, put it into a common naming convention, and put it into a format that you could put on, one. When I say gigabyte, I meant terabyte. You can put on OneDrive and send out to people around the world. So in the process of building our own content, we also started building our own tools. One of those tools is Conform Studio, which does exactly as I've described. It's a tool that conforms your footage, and it's relatively inexpensive. We dropped. I think right now the price is $79 for it. So we're trying to build things that work for people and also things that people can afford.
Wow, Kanen, I haven't even heard of Conform Studio, which I'm looking up right now.
Yeah. It's just a fun...
Oh, there it is. There's a demo. Oh, my God.
Yeah, it's a fun tool that we built along the way, Mike.
It came out in June. Where have I been?
Clearly, you have not been reading your memos.
You need better PR, Kanen.
Well,
good. Embarrass him in public.
That is
just make him feel like he's inadequate, would you?
That is a fact.
Welcome to the digital production buzz.
Kanen, do you think of yourself as a visionary, or as a storyteller, or as a technologist, or as a filmmaker? How would you categorize yourself? I mean, I use words like, irreverent and edgy and willing to take risks and, killer sense of humor, but how would you describe your role and what you're trying to accomplish for yourself?
Well, I've often joked that I'm kind of the anti-Stu Maschwitz. He started out as a filmmaker and became an accidental technologist, and I think I started out as a technologist and became an accidental filmmaker, which is kind of interesting. But there's with both of us, and I don't mean to compare myself to Stu, although I think he's a wonderful human being. With both of us, I think that we're both really focused on the idea of putting together a technology that makes people's lives easier, right? I don't really care. I mean, it's kind of an interesting thing. There's a lot of tools out there, and I really have no interest in them because I think that they're impossible to learn. Mm-hmm. And Michael, you and I have talked about this before. I mean, you need a PhD in about 6 different subjects to learn something like Nuke or one of these other tools. And so I've made it, kind of my life mission to make that process of creating visual effects or beautiful music, like with that Studio Atmospheres, or Conform Studio, the thing that Michael mentioned earlier. I've made it my life's mission to, make those tools easier for filmmakers, because I don't think you should really have to have a giant budget or a giant crew or a bunch of, frankly, guys who are overpaid and sometimes rather difficult to help you bring your vision to life. And that maybe makes me controversial. And don't get me wrong, I love a lot of these visual effects artists. I think they're great, but you shouldn't be shackled to them, right? You shouldn't be, held captive.
But let me play devil's advocate for a minute.
Yep.
I think one of the challenges that brings out creativity is that when you're fighting against a technological barrier, if everything is possible and everything is easy, it's hard to decide which way to go. But when you're always hammering up against a barrier, the cost of doing live television 30 years ago, the fact that you had to paint on wet concrete to do what Michelangelo did, it's the fight against what technology allows you to do that allows creativity to flourish. It sounds like you would not agree with that.
Oh no, I think we are in violent agreement, Larry. I totally agree with you, and I think that the part that I think is difficult for any independent filmmaker today, budget is always a pain point. It's difficult. Finding really good people who are talented is amazingly difficult, and then there's this hard barrier, which is if everyone can make a film, everyone will. And so how do you get your voice out there? I think we have, as independent filmmakers, we have many, many, many barriers that we have to overcome. And one of them should not be, how do I use this stupid software?
Yeah.
True.
Well, that's always part of it, but whatever you're going to do, just do that story that I want to see.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's how you get your voice out there.
Although finding good stories is sometimes tricky.
That's the problem. There's a lot of people out there telling stories, but I don't want to see them.
Yeah,
or if I
or
do
listen
see
to
them
them.
and they're not very good, then that's where that ends right there. So.
Well, Kanen, let's change hats for you for a second. Coming up in April is my favorite toy store, which is NAB. And I know that you're doing a panel at NAB, but I don't know what the panel is about. And I'm trying to decide if I should just sleep longer or if I should attend. So tell me what's happening for you at NAB, and then we'll talk a little bit about what you're looking to see.
Now, you should take your digital recorder anytime Kanen's on a panel.
A digital recorder?
Yes.
All right.
Record what he says.
I got to. So first, what's your thought on a panel? What's it about?
So I'm doing two things at NAB that are both very, very exciting for me. One is I'm doing an all-day green screen workshop that teaches people how to use, this cruddy green screen like I have behind me with tracking markers and all of those things to create fully realized 3D environments. So I'm going to walk people through a full day of how to do that.
A full day of staring at a green screen? Man, you are a cruel and unusual taskmaster, man. I'm impressed.
Yeah, but it'll change the background often.
Oh, okay, good.
That's right.
Okay, so we got a day workshop on green screen.
So a workshop on green screen. And then the other thing is, you said panel. I can't help but get excited about telling you this. We are launching, at NAB, we're launching an Adobe Premiere Pro panel and an Adobe After Effects panel that is a panel inside of both Premiere Pro and After Effects that gives you ready access to over 10,000 high-quality visual effects, flame, fire, explosions.
It's not a panel, it's an extension. It's where you have your own part of the interface.
That's correct.
You're launching two extensions, Premiere and After Effects?
That's correct.
That is very, very cool.
That's going to work with that studio, all the 10 gazillion effects that you have in that?
That's correct, Michael. You'll be able to preview them, download them, automatically comp them into your timeline, and you'll have ready access to over 10,000 practical visual effects, tons of composed music, and tons of composed sound elements. And we're adding a bunch more stuff, too.
Wow.
No wonder you're not getting any sleep these days. I understand. That's a ton of work.
Yeah.
What's been the biggest challenge in putting that together?
Oh, man, that's an interesting question. Well, we decided instead of going with the old panel technology, which was written in something Adobe Flash, basically, we decided to embrace the new Adobe SDK, which is HTML5 and JavaScript and all that stuff. So our panel is not only lightning fast, but it uses the internet to do previews and all those things. So it's a hardcore technology solution that hopefully feels like a simple thing to use.
That is so cool. Are you sitting there doing the coding yourself, or are you waving your magic wand at others who are doing the coding?
I think I've written one line of code, but,
and you did it very well.
Mostly it's great people on my team, like Bart Walczak, who's actually in Warsaw, Poland.
Oh my goodness!
And different people like that. Yeah.
Can we get a preview of this? Is it up on the website yet?
No, it's a secret, Michael. Nobody knows.
Is it still super secret?
We can't talk about it till NAB.
Oh, then
we're doing a closed beta between now and NAB, and we're looking for feedback because we want to launch it as with the best possible panel we can.
Oh, it's a closed beta. Well, there is something here on the website. It says it's secret, though.
Well, we can't talk about it. So we won't mention the fact that if you go to thatstudio.com, you won't learn anything about this secret. Kanen, as you're looking forward to NAB, putting your technology hat on, what are some of the things you're looking forward to seeing? I mean, are your eyes really lighting up at 10K video preview technology?
Absolutely not. I'm still shooting at 2.5K most days.
And it looks exactly like 10K.
It's hard to tell the difference.
Yeah, true enough. True enough. So what's got your interest?
To be honest with you, I mean, I don't want to sound like a big fanboy, but I mentioned the Adobe Premiere Pro panels that we're doing in the After Effects panel, I'm really excited to see. I saw a sneak preview, like many people did, at Adobe Max, and I'm really excited to see some of the great audio tools and some of the great video tools Adobe's doing. They seem like they're just on fire the last year. It's crazy. So I'm excited about that, and I'm excited about. So we're going to be over in the plug-in pavilion, the little, what I think some people call Tiny Town.
It's one of my favorite spots, though. You meet such great people, and there's so many cool apps in such a small space that going to the plug-in pavilion is just a must-see on my trip.
Plug-in kiosks.
Yes.
Come by and see us if you do. But I mention them because right behind them, taking up basically the width of the plug-in pavilion, is Red Giant, and I'm really excited about what Red Giant's doing with the universe lately. I think they really turned the dial to 11 on that, which is great.
That's a very cool point. So, what's beside taking a long nap after NAB launches? What's in the future for the rest of the year for that studio?
Well, we're finally at a point where I think we're going to be able to show some of the really cool stuff we're doing. And with regard to the creative content, we have Michael has seen. I showed at Lassie Pug actually for the first time, the behind the scenes and how we put together Hero Punk, and so that's exciting. But we have the TV pilot that we've been talking about for about a year now, 1820. We're about to show a heck of a lot of that, along with how we used a bunch of the tools we've created along the way to build it. So I think this year is just going to be a ton of content and a ton of tools.
Any release date at all on 1820, or is there a self-imposed deadline that you're putting on yourself?
It will be before October.
Good.
Of which year?
Of this year.
Okay, good. Just checking.
It will be in the future.
By the way, on our live chat, which is going on right below the live video stream, Eric is asking whether you're doing any more work in 4K or everything you're doing is 2.5.
Oh no, we're definitely shooting some stuff in 4K, but we're most of the editing and most of the stuff that we're doing with all of our artists is in 2.5. Yeah,
cool.
We are shooting in 4K though.
And one day you'll be able to come to Lassie Pug and actually show it on our 2K projector if we ever get it plugged in.
It's plugged in. It's
long
just,
story.
There's no power.
Interview me one day and I'll tell you all about it.
Yeah, we don't interview you. You're too depressing.
Okay.
One other question before we let you go, Kanen. You've spent a lot of time thinking about the process of filmmaking, everything from management down to the technology. For somebody that wants to start doing their first independent film, and they understand how a camera works, and they understand how to point a microphone and pick up sounds, they've got the basics down. What don't they know? What advice would you give them that they need to understand before they tackle a feature?
I think, the hardest thing, I said this earlier, but I think the hardest thing is finding talented people and knowing how to spot that talent. And I think the thing that is really important, and that goes for not just the crew or not just the crew or the people working behind the camera or around the camera, but also goes for the actors. And I think learning to spot that talent is a real gift. And I think that you can learn that, but I think it takes some effort. And I would just encourage them to watch as much as they possibly can with a very critical eye to see what it is that makes a performance and what it is that makes a shot.
And my advice is don't be afraid to make a mistake. And don't pretend you know everything. Those are the two biggest mistakes, is don't try to be perfect. Just do it and learn from what you've done.
Hire wonderful people and let them do their
stuff.
stuff.
You can watch the 100 crappy videos that we released before we got to something that was even watchable. So if you want to learn how not to do it, you've got plenty of evidence out there.
Kanen, what website can people go to learn more about what you and your team are creating?
If they go to thatstudio.com.
That's all one word, THAT Studio, thatstudio.com.
And they'll learn nothing about the panel.
And Kanen Flowers is the Chief Mayhem Officer and founder of That Studio, co-founder, truthfully. Kanen, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you guys.
I'm going to fool with Conform Studio.
And nobody does a better job of fooling around than you do. Thanks again.
So
Take care.
Smart.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Kanen.